Well, hello, my friends. Today we are going to do a traditional Rhodesian FAL camouflage pattern with the traditional yellow baby poop and forest green. Now what I have right here, my palette today, my canvas if you will, this is a DS Arms SA58. This is the Bush Warrior. Now the basic coating that comes from the factory is a black Duracoat, a very, very solid, tough finish. But a lot of you out there say, you know what? If you're going to truly honor the FAL, the R1, it really needs, well, it needs a Rhodesian bush camouflage. Now folks, if you know anything about the Rhodesian Bush War, you'll know that during the beginning stages, in the early phases of the war, they didn't camouflage their rifles. They left them black just as is. But as the war progressed from the late 60s into the 70s, and then into the late 70s, they decided to camouflage their guns. And how did they do it? What did they have? Well, they didn't have a local Walmart. Duracoat didn't exist yet. They couldn't go down to Target or Walmart and pick up cans of Krylon. What they had was motor pool paint. They would go to the motor pool and they would get cans of paint, yes, literal cans of paint, and brushes, and they would sit down and they would brush camouflage their guns. And that's what we're trying to do today. If you're going to camouflage or do a traditional camouflage on an R1, it should look like a 19-year-old private was sitting on an ammo crate with a can of paint and a brush, because that's exactly what happened back then in Rhodesia. So, before we began, I went ahead and I used Duracoat TruStrip, and I TruStripped the entire gun to make sure that there's no oil or grease or dirt or whatever on this. Not that it really mattered that much, because this is going to be probably the most ugly camouflage pattern you're ever going to love. How are we going to begin? Well, I have my 1-inch brush, and I'm on my stand in front of me. I have my traditional Rhodesian baby poop yellow. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and start by wide brush strokes. That's right, wide angular brush strokes. It's okay if bristle marks get into the paint job, because that's how they originally were. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I don't get paint on the front sight or on the gas system, and I'm not going to paint the grenade sight there. So I'll keep the paint off of those. But I will get it right up here on the barrel at the bottom of the muzzle brake. Now I don't want to fill in the holes. I don't want to fill in the gas holes with the paint. So there we go. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. I hope you are. Got my little helper here to hold up my subject. Yes, indeed. So, yes, just wide brush strokes. Wide brush strokes. We're doing the baby poop first. Now remember, we want to keep the paint off of the moving parts. We don't want to cover up and paint over things like the safety or the trigger or the takedown lever. If a little bit of paint gets on it, that's okay. That's all right. But we don't want to deliberately paint over the top of them. Yes, indeed. Now this kit, this traditional kit, you guys know that I love Duracoat. But Duracoat looks really good. We don't want this necessarily look really good. We want it to look authentic. So what I did was I went to Arizona Response Systems and I bought the entire kit. I bought the kit with the gloves and the brushes and the paint. And let me tell you what, brothers and sisters, if you've ever tried to match the baby poop paint, if you've ever walked into a paint store and asked the clerk, yes, I'd like yellow baby poop, you're going to get weird looks. You're going to get weird looks. Because I guarantee you that they don't often People don't often walk into the Sherwin-Williams paint store and say, I want yellow baby poop. That just doesn't happen. Or maybe it does where you live. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where you live. You might say, well, Paul, Professor Paul, where I live, people walk into the hardware store and they ask for baby poop paint all the time. Well, all right, you might live in a different store. Maybe you live, in Zimbabwe, and that's the case. Rhodesia forever. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We're just going to have a good time here. And that's the main thing about doing this traditional paint job is you want to have a good time while you're doing it. Just take your time. You might want to move up my handle here. Move my handle up. There we go. I'm going to change it up a little bit so it doesn't look exactly like the other side did. And if a bristle comes off and it sticks in the paint, don't even worry about it. Don't you even worry about it. You can even get it on the carrying handle if you want. I would not. Now, I've kept a magazine in here very deliberately because there's no need to put paint on the inside of the magazine well. So we're going to avoid that. We're going to try not to put paint on the inside of the magazine well. But if you get paint near it or on the edge or what have you, it's no big deal. It's not going to hurt anything. You also want to make sure that you keep the paint off of the rear sight. You don't want to paint onto the rear sight. I'm going to go ahead and pick it up here. Keep going with my baby poop. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And you Rhodesia FALs will appreciate this. You'll appreciate the baby poop. Everybody who's a gun person should appreciate the wonderful color that is Rhodesian baby poop. I'm going to get a little bit in here, maybe a little bit on the trigger guard. It's okay if it gets on the trigger guard. It's no big deal. Not going to hurt anything if it gets on the trigger guard. We're just trying to make natural stripes like you might see out in the bush. Because we want to break it up. Because let's face it, aside from crows and maybe panthers, there are very few things in nature that are 100% pure black. There might be things with shades of black, but there are very few things in nature that are really 100% pure black. So the whole point of this is just to break up that hard black outline. After all, the Fire Force troopers, they were wearing brushstroke camouflage. If you're going to wear brushstroke camouflage and then you're going to hold a great big black rifle that stands out, kind of doesn't make any sense, does it? And so after so many years of fighting the Bush War, they said, hey, tell all the privates and PFCs, tell the sergeants to send them over to the motor pool and have them paint their guns. Go to see the motor pool sergeant and he'll give you paint and brushes and you can sit down on an ammo crate and you can go ahead and paint your gun up. Paint your R1. Now, I'm not even going to try and put paint on the rubber butt, the butt pad, because it won't stick that well, and quite frankly, the rubber butt pad's always against your shoulder, so it'll rub off quickly. We'll do the other side of the stock here. I hope you guys are liking, I hope you're enjoying, or I hope you're having a good time here. Trying to keep you entertained because, well, we are watching paint dry, so to speak. It's not too dry yet. Yes, indeed. We want this to not too much baby poop, but just enough. And if you get more baby poop yellow on the gun than you think maybe you want, it's no big deal because this is the first coat, and you can put the green, the forest green or the refined jungle green, you can put that over it. So it's no big deal. It's really no big deal. There's no such thing as a mistake. They're all just happy accidents. And if you happen to have a happy accident, well, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. So there we go. I think we did a pretty good job. Maybe put just a little touch right there. There we go. I think we did a pretty good job with the initial baby poop. So I'm going to set this brush down right here. I'll close our baby poop up. Now, when you get a kit like this one from Arizona Response Systems, There's enough paint in here to do at least 2 full rifles, maybe 3 if you're thrifty. So you want to keep it sealed up. Don't let the paint get dry. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, well, we have to step back now and we've got to let this dry before we put the other coat on. Oh, contraire, mon frere. That 19-year-old private or PFC who's sitting on the ammo can, that kid didn't wait for it to dry. He put the first coat on, bam, grabbed his brush and put the second coat on. So that's what we're going to do. Yes, indeed. So I'm going to dip into my forest jungle green, the Rhodesian jungle green, and I'm just going to basically fill in all the areas. I'm going to fill in all the areas that are black and that don't have the baby poop on them. But if the baby poop and the green overlap, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. It's not going to hurt anything. Not going to hurt anything at all. Remember, this is your project, and your project should look like you want it to. That was one of the unique and interesting things about the R1s from the Rhodesian Bush War, is that none of them ever actually looked the same. They weren't a repeated pattern, and that makes sense because, well, you had Private Jones sitting on the ammo crate painting his rifle, and then right next to him was Private Smith, and he did his, and so on and so forth. So they all came out just a little bit different. Now they had a traditional theme. You had a traditional theme to them, but they didn't look exactly the same. They didn't look like carbon copies of one another. And that's perfectly fine, and that's one of the interesting things about the Rhodesian pattern, is they all have a little bit of uniqueness to them. They're all a little bit unique. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's what we're looking for here. We're looking for some uniqueness. We just want to make sure that we're blending in our baby poop with our green. We want to blend those in together. And if a little bit of black is still showing, that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. Not going to hurt anything at all. And like I said, if you overlap, don't worry about it. That happened all the time. As a matter of fact, if you want to blend the colors, you'd like a little bit of overlap. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed you would. So let me grab her up here. Get the big parts. Get my magazine. Yes, indeed. I got my magazine here. You want to do the bottom of the magazine? Do the bottom of the magazine. I don't care. It is your world. You can do the bottom of the magazine if you want. Yes, indeed. You can do the charging handle or the carrying handle if you want. If you don't want to do the carrying handle, you don't have to. Now, many of you guys out there who are history buffs, you'll be saying, but Paul, didn't the Rhodesians cut off or remove the carrying handles from their guns? Yes, in many cases they did. Now, if you look at some of the earlier photographs of the Bush War, you'll see that there were carrying handles on the guns. And then later on, you'll see that they were removed. So it was probably a situation where the sergeant major decided, hey, get rid of the carrying handles. They're rattling. They're making too much noise. Cut them off. Get rid of them. Now, with an FAL, you do not need to cut the carrying handle off. You can actually just disassemble the gun and remove the carrying handle. But all of the historical examples that I've come across of R1s, Rhodesian R1s, looked as if the private took a grinder and literally just cut the handle off, which is something you would expect from a private. If you wouldn't expect a private to get the manual and disassemble the gun properly, you'd expect him to grab a grinder and cut that thing off in 3 seconds, which is probably what happened more often than not. Now, on new guns, on a new gun such as this one, the handles don't really rattle. This gun, the handle doesn't really rattle, but I'm sure as the guns got older and they were carried more, that the tolerances got a little bit looser, and the handles made more noise. Therefore, the sergeant major said, cut those things off there. I don't want to see another carrying handle on another R1. And they said, yes, sir, Sergeant Major. And they went and they chopped them off. Yes, indeed. I'm going to fill this in here. Like I said, we don't want to cover up the controls, and we don't want to get paint in the sights. So we're just kind of working around them. We're working around them. Yes, indeed. You can get paint around the trigger guard. That's perfectly fine. No one's going to fault you for that. No one's going to fault you for that. Like I said, the main purpose of this is to break up the solid black outline of the big R1 FAL rifle. You want to break that up. You don't want a camouflage kid out there in the bush or the jungle, and then he's holding this great big black object that stands out against everything. That's the point. That's the point. Now I'm going to go ahead and... Oh, I got my thumb in the paint, and that's okay. That's okay. I wonder how many of these actually had thumbprints or fingerprints from the private or the PFC that was sitting on a crate in a motor pool, painting his rifle. Painting his rifle. Yes, indeed. He was probably glad to be painting his rifle because since he was painting his rifle, it meant A, he wasn't in the bush, and B, he wasn't doing PT or some other exercise. So most of those young privates and PFCs were probably more than happy to go over to the motor pool and paint their rifles. And they probably took their time because they knew as soon as they were finished, the sergeant would find something for them to do. Yes, indeed. The sergeant would find something for them to do. So they probably took their time. They probably took their time, yes. All right. So we're getting to that point where it's still sticky. Now, what this looks like at this moment is this looks like, well, it looks as if it would have when Private Smith was fresh in the motor pool and he was putting his rifle together. He was painting his rifle, camouflaging it like the sergeant told him to. And that's fine. And if you would like your rifle to look just like that, if you would like your rifle to look just like PFC Smith just finished it, he just finished his rifle, yep, and he set it over in the corner to dry. If you'd like your rifle to look like that, well then what you could do right now is just stop. However, if you would like your rifle to look battle worn, you say, well, that's nice, but that looks like a fresh or a new paint job. And I don't want my gun to look fresh. I really want my, well, whether it's DS Arms or another one, I want my rifle to look like it went through battle. I want it to look like one of the original R1s. Well, the folks at Arizona Response Systems, they have an entire kit, and part of that kit, including the gloves, is a trash bag. You say, a trash bag? Why do I have a trash bag? Am I going to put my rifle in the trash? Well, kind of. So what we're going to do right now, while the paint is still sticky, it's kind of dry, it's a little bit dry, but it's not totally dry. So I'm going to grab this up, and I'm just going to put my hands on here and peel. That's right, I'm going to put this on here, and then I'm going to peel it off. You're like, oh my Lord, you just went through all that work and now you're going to ruin it? Well, we're roughing it. That's right, we're roughing it. I'm going to wrap this around here. Give it a good squeeze. Yes, indeed. Give it a good squeeze. And then I'm going to peel it off. Yeah. Peeling it off. There we go. There we go. Fold the handle down now. And then, of course, we still need to get the bottom. So we can take another part of the bag if we want to. Or we can use the same part of the bag. It doesn't really matter all that much. and we're going to grab the bottom, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to squeeze, grab it, and squeeze it. Grab it all over the place. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right. Peeling it off. There we go. Peeling it off. And you say, oh, but some of the paint came off, and now you can see the black underneath. Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. If you want an original looking, roughed out, I'm going to grab the pistol grip now. There we go. Grab that pistol grip. Wrap it up. All right. Peel it off. How's that looking? Is that looking rough? Is that looking rough enough for you guys? As I said at the beginning, at the very beginning, if you're going to do, discard that. There. We'll put my little helping hand back here. If you're going to do a traditional Rhodesian style camouflage paint job, it should literally look like a private sat with paintbrushes and paint on an ammo crate and painted up his rifle. And then if you want it to look really rough and worn, you can do certain things to patina, that's right, fancy word for you guys, to patina the rifle so that it really looks like it's battle worn. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this segment of painting your rifle with the Pimp Hand of America. Talk to you again real soon. Hi, thanks for watching the video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Now I would like to personally invite you to join us at getsotg.com. If you sign up today, you'll never miss another article, radio show, or video. That's getsotg.com. Thanks a lot.